Hi Tribe. Good to see everyone. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about orientation and commitment because getting clients into our skills class is very, very important. We can't really do RO-DBT one-on-one. Well, we can, everything is possible, but they're not going to get the same benefit in just one-on-one therapy as they would in a skills class. So learning those skills in the group environment. We do call this skills class in RO-DBT because we want the clients to get the idea that these are adult skills, these are skills that they can learn, they can put into place. And also a lot of clients have a past history of group therapy and not liking that. You're feeling that it's oversharing, being really vulnerable, and feeling that it's not really relevant to them. So we do call it a skills class to try and give them the idea that this is a classroom setting, that this is a setting where we're learning new skills. So we do need to get clients ready to go into these skills classes. Some will be willing to do it right away, others need a little bit of coaxing. So we do need to do a little bit of orientation and commitment in order to get our clients there. Now, from an RO-DBT perspective, we're aiming for about 3 sessions to get clients into those skills classes. So trying to get them in there within the first couple of sessions. That being said, that's considering that they've already done a full assessment before those 3 sessions. So if you're doing the assessment on a new client who's coming into your service, that it might be 4 or 5 sessions to actually get them into that skills class. But it's really important, even though we say 3 sessions, that they are committed and they are going in there agreeing to the components of treatment. Now, this is something that's in the manual, but also something I found really necessary from a practitioner point of view. And I've made this mistake a couple of times myself in just putting clients in because I think it's going to be relevant for them before all of these commitment strategies and this orientation process is complete. So it's really important that from an RO-DBT perspective, we orient and get these clients committed to entering into our skills class. So in those first couple of sessions, first of all, we need to focus on the assessment. Sometimes that's done before entering into this process. Other times you'll be doing that as the treating clinician. So we've talked about assessment before, trying to really identify that this client is in the right place for treatment for them. So you have the idea that it's the right treatment. Now we need to convince the client that this is the right place for them to be. So the very first step is to orient them first of all to the hands-on nature of the treatment and let them know, your role as a therapist, that you're not just going to be listening to them, you're not going to be just passive, it's a very active treatment, and you're going to be collaborating with them. And you may be a little bit different from therapists that they've seen before or that they've seen on TV. You're probably going to be a little bit more casual, a little bit less formal. And so we first of all want them to know that this is a little bit different in regards to the treatment that we're coming across. That being said, the absolute first thing we need to do is help a client self-identify as over-control. Now, there's a lot of scripts on how to do this, and it's important that when we follow the scripts in the manual that we do kind of seem quite genuine about it. We don't just want to read scripts and come across as quite plastic or fake, but at the same time we want to be as verbatim as possible. So something to consider when talking about going through those scripts with our clients. So first of all, we need to help a client self-identify as over-control. And so this is really important so the client is able to say, yes, I can relate to this. I am over-control. This is who I am. And we also want to help them understand it's not a bad thing. There's also some great things about being over-control. So all of that comes along with the script that we're trying to help them to say, yes, I am over-control, and own that to a certain degree. So following the script is really important. There's a part of the script where we first of all talk about what under control is, and we really need to demonstrate that to the client. So big hands, waving them around a lot. Again, we want to be genuine about it as best we can. It might be best to practice it if it's not something that's comfortable for you. So we want to be able to demonstrate what under control is. And this will really help the client to understand viscerally that this probably isn't them. They're not wanting to be the center of attention. They're not throwing their arms around. They're not relaxed and casual. They're completely the opposite. So we talk about what under control is and help a client to identify that under control is not them. That's not what they are. And then we provide them with what over-control is. We describe that. We try and talk about what that's like as a child as well as an adult, so the client really understands that this is likely to be them, and try to get them committed that this is who they are. So this is in the first 1 to 2 sessions you have with them, maybe even session 3 if you need to spend a little bit more time on the assessment process. So first of all, we need to help them identify as over-control. The next part of that is trying to get the client to understand the biosocial model of being over control. So we've talked about the fact that they're over controlled, then let's talk to them about the development of where that over control came from. So understanding how their biological processes, so their biotemperament, as well as their early environment have worked together to provide them with a coping style, and how that coping style has then interacted with their biology and environment to create an over control coping style. So talking to them about how their vulnerability, their temperament, and their environment that was likely to be punishing of emotions and encouraging of high achieving, and how that may have lured them to cope in certain ways, or shove their emotions down, or pretend they don't exist, or whatever it is that they're doing. So trying to create those links between what it is that they're doing as a coping style and where that's actually come from. Again, we're trying to take the heat off the client rather than saying you're bad or there's something wrong with you. We're trying to really show them that this is actually okay, this has come from somewhere. There's a really logical progression about how this has come here. So that's the next step about this orientation and commitment process, is trying to get the client to understand what the biosocial theory is and how they were likely to develop these coping strategies that they're having. So from there, we can move on to social signaling and introducing the idea about social signaling and how that affects their relationships and how that interacts with treatment. So there is a really lovely progression from the biosocial theory into the social signaling introduction, because we can talk about how that coping style has been learned and what they've learnt to do and how that may be affected. And so the biosocial model is generally introduced in about session 3, maybe 2 if it sort of comes in, maybe 4 if you don't get the chance. There's a little bit of flexibility with that. But then from there, going into the social signaling, which again, session 3 to session 4, we generally try to aim for this. If you're also doing the assessment and that's taking a little while, it may end up being session 5, but we're trying to get this coming in the first 4 sessions. And so introducing social signaling, it's introducing that key mechanism for change. So what it is that actually we're focusing on here in our skills classes, what it is that is so important for us to actually change. And this can be a bit difficult, because even if clients are on board with the over-control thing and they understand the biosocial model, sometimes clients will reject the idea that it is their social signaling. Indeed, I have had clients who have said, this isn't relevant to me. Me as a therapist, I can look at the client and how they cope, and I identify, look, actually, I think this is a real issue based on how you interact with me and how you interact with other skills class members. However, if they deny that it's a problem, there's not much we can do other than just present the option to them as, logically as possible and in a way that they can understand. However, if they don't take it, they don't take it. So following the script again is really important for this, and there is another opportunity for that visceral learning. So actually telling a story, there's a couple of stories in the manual, either one with a flat face where you wouldn't expect there to be a flat face, or one with an overtly smiley face when you wouldn't expect that to be there. And telling these stories, and they're quite extreme, they're quite out there, but the idea is to give a client the idea of what it would be like for someone to tell you an amazing story but actually not show you any emotion. And it's really uncomfortable, and clients can often identify that this is weird. I don't like this. I don't like interacting with you in this situation because it doesn't seem right. Again, we're not trying to tell them that they're bad or they're wrong or they're weird, but we are trying to sort of give them the idea that if their social signaling is not congruent with how that they are actually feeling, that can be strange for the other person and that can affect relationships. So we're trying to link in that over control, biotemperament, how we've learned to cope, and then how we actually signal that to others and why that's a problem. So this is so important, and I found that this is where I've gone the most wrong. possibly in my early stages in learning RO-DBT, is trying to actually get the client really understanding the idea about we are trying to change social signaling here, and that's going to change our relationships, and it's going to change what's actually our mood and our coping styles. So this is a really important idea, and to get them on board with that. And again, trying to be as genuine as possible. Not saying to clients we're not just throwing our emotions around crazy. We are doing it in a context-dependent way. We're doing it in a way that is going to make sense to you and that's okay for you. So these are all really important processes. So in the first 4 sessions, we really need to go through those few steps and those 3 scripts in particular to help a client to really understand that they are over control and they need to focus on their social signaling for this reason. The other tasks we need to do in these first couple of sessions is we really need to get a commitment from the client that if they're thinking about dropping out, that they're going to come and talk to you in person first. And again, this is super important. So a lot of these clients are very, very good at saying, sure, I'll give you a call next week, and never calling you, or making an appointment and cancelling it and then never actually rebooking as a way of trying to avoid treatment. So we're trying to get a commitment from these clients that they're going to actually tell you if they're wanting to do that. So these clients are very, very good with sticking to their commitments. They're very good with rules. So if they do make a commitment to you, especially if that's in writing, then they're likely to do that. And when they do pull out and they do sort of try and sneak away, you can sort of bring that up with them. So say, look, we made this commitment that you're going to come and talk to me if you do want to drop out. I'd really love you to do that. And more often than not, they're going to do that. So that's another really important aspect about our orientation and commitment. So these are the steps we need to go through to get a client into treatment. We need them to understand the hands-on nature of the treatment, that they'll be interacting in the skills class. They need to understand that they're over control, the biosocial theory, as well as social signaling, and they need to commit to actually talking to you if they're going to drop out. Now, RO-DBT is designed as a 30-week program that people can come in whenever they want to, except for obviously the last week, because that doesn't make any sense. So it is meant to be a rolling intake. Not everyone's going to run it as a rolling intake, and not everyone's going to run it for 30 weeks, but that's the design. If you're running a rolling intake, that's fantastic. There are a couple of things that you'll need to also introduce to your new clients before going into that. And that is the model of emotions. So our 5 emotional states, that neuroregulatory model, and I'll talk about that at some other stage, because there is so much discussion about the social safety system and our other systems that it would make no sense to a client who's coming in, session 8, that are talking about social safety system, they've got no idea what they're talking about. So that's something that needs to be introduced to these clients early on. We also need to introduce to them loving kindness meditation, because that is a really important way of identifying our social safety system. In addition, a lot of these clients are going to find it really triggering to do loving kindness meditation for the first time in group. So having that opportunity to do it in one-on-one first is going to be quite important. So these are all the processes that us as therapists need to go through with our clients before entering RO-DBT and to get them really committed to RO-DBT. That's basically what we need to focus on for orientation and commitment, as well as obviously our rapport building. The next aspect of that, and I'm not going to spend ages on this, is actually try to talk to these clients about their goals. So we've talked to them about what we need to do in regards to our scripts. Then we also need to identify with them their treatment goals. So we can use this to try and keep them in treatment, as well as obviously you're over control. We've identified that your social signaling is likely to be a problem, and then try to link it back to their goals. If you've got eating disorder clients, we really need to make sure that food and weight is not one of them, is not a goal. We're trying to make these goals concrete, not just I want to be happy, but what that might actually look like I want this job, or I want this in my life, or something like that. We need to make at least one goal related to relationships or connectedness, even if it is I would like to talk more openly to people at work, or I'd like a relationship one day, or whatever that is. So trying to have at least one goal that is relationship oriented. And the reason why we're doing all these things is because clients will have moments when they want to drop out. They will have moments where they rethink what they're actually doing. And we need to bring it back to, well, remember we had this discussion that you're over control and that social signaling was probably getting in the way of your goals and for these goals. And I found this really, really useful in working with clients to sort of say, well, look, I understand you want to drop out and you're not happy, but remember we've identified that your social signaling seems to be getting in the way of your career goals here. And my concern is obviously if you drop out or if you stop focusing on this, then that's going to keep happening. You know, is this something we're really willing to recommit to, or what's led to this lack of commitment here? So those goals are the other aspect. And so all of these are there to keep reminding the client of why they're doing the treatment and to get them to be really stay focused on what they actually are. Because especially when we start talking about our themes and our social signaling targets, we really want to be able to say, is this actually affecting your life? Is this going against your goals? Is this affecting you and what you want to achieve? So all of that does sort of come into it as treatment progresses. So orientation and commitment is super important for us to draw back on throughout the entire time that a client is in RO-DBT. So that's a little bit of information about our orientation and commitment processes, why it is so important for us to go on. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I look forward to talking with you guys shortly.